I've always wondered what it's like living in Seattle. How about you? Well, stick around and we'll find out. Today we have our guest, Steven Chapman. Steven recently retired from teaching high school math and enjoys having no responsibilities besides his family and hobbies. He has renewed his hobbies of quilting, cooking, and racquetball. He is currently ranked number 3 in his age division in Washington State. Number 3 in what?
In the 55 to 60 age bracket, men's bracket.
For racquetball.
Yes.
Awesome. Steven moved to Seattle after graduating from Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington in 1989 and met his husband in 1990. They've been together for 34 years. They have 2 adopted sons and are eagerly awaiting grandchildren. Oh, mazel tov. Although none are imminently expected. Steven's community involvement is a testament to his commitment to social causes. He's an active member of their Lutheran congregation and other civic groups. His activism includes advocating for full inclusion of LGBTQ people in the Lutheran Church, working to alleviate hunger and homelessness. One of his most significant achievements is helping a refugee family from Syria start a new life in British Columbia. Recently, he took on the role of regional coordinator for Gonzaga University's Lavender Alumni Network. That's quite a bio. You do a lot, Steven. Thank you for your services to the community.
It's hard to talk about yourself.
Yeah, I know, but you'll get the chance. So, Steven, tell us about yourself and your connection to Seattle. I think you've been living there for a long time, and tell us what drew you to the city and how long you've been living there.
So graduation from college was coming up. I had a call from a cousin to come spend Thanksgiving in Seattle. So I did. That was in Thanksgiving 1988. And I immediately fell in love with the city. The movie culture, the coffee culture, the gay community was vibrant. It was all over the city. It was an exciting place. And I just felt, your soul just went, yes, this is the place for me. And I moved here the summer after I graduated, and I've lived 1, 2, 3, 4, about 7 different places in 7 different parts of the region. And I can't, as much as I love it here, it's a great place. Yeah, I'll never not have a place here.
So yeah, you get that feeling, when you visit a place or, and go back, you get that feeling that this is home feeling,
mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that's what happened with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember very vividly going to the Egyptian movie theater with my uncle and ordering. I didn't even know how to order espresso. So I just ordered a shot of espresso. I had never had espresso before in a movie theater.
That's amazing.
And the guy looked at me like, "Are you sure you don't want anything else in that?" And I went, "No." and my uncle stepped and said, "Yeah, give him a little, a little milk and sugar, blah blah blah." And then we carried it into the theater, and I went, "Okay, this is cool." Indie movies, coffee house, combined. Let's do this.
Yeah, coffee culture in Seattle. Love it. So let's talk a little bit about the climate and geography. Seattle is known for its unique climate and stunning geography. Can you describe the typical weather patterns and how the geography influences the local climate?
Yeah. So most people when they think of weather in Seattle, they go rain, which is true. I mean, it rains a lot. But not many people know that New York City actually gets more rain than Seattle. The issue is that our rain is over a longer period of time. It will rain or mist for days and days and days on end. Whereas in New York, it's more concentrated. So they have more inches over fewer days, and we have the reverse. So it is wet. It is wet. Our rainy season is historically mid-October to mid-June. So imagine 36 inches of rain over 8-9 month period. Yeah.
That's wet.
It's wet. And everybody gets wet. You get wet. Bill Gates gets wet. The governor gets wet.
Gets wet.
Everybody gets wet. So nobody really worries about it. I mean, I don't own an umbrella. The joke is true. You know how you pick out the tourists in Seattle? They're the ones with umbrellas.
The umbrella.
What we do get is, polar fleece lined rain jackets. Everybody has one or two, and that's what you wear. For me, though, it's the gloom that really kind of defines Seattle winters. When the rain comes, the clouds come, and you can go for a month without seeing the sun. I know that because I've kept track of when do you see the sun. So and not only that, in the winter, we're so far north, the sun only comes up about 20-25 degrees above the horizon. And it's a very long, slow journey just for that little bit. So it tends to be dark in the winter. The opposite side is in summer. We have long, glorious days. I mean, last night it was almost daylight until 10 o'clock.
That's amazing.
And the sun gets up to about 65 degrees above the horizon. Yeah.
How do you deal?
Just to kind of give you an idea of what happens in the weather around here. Nothing like sports events. Nothing gets called because of weather. Kids soccer, softball, ultimate, all those outdoor sports. Rain, okay, you get wet. You want to go hiking? Sure, you just go hiking. You get wet. That's just the way we live around here. And yeah, you have the clothes for the weather and no umbrella.
That's pretty much when I was on vacation. I think I was there in October, and I had to stop into a Columbia store to get a raincoat.
Yeah. And
then I dealt with it.
Another little statistic, I would say from early November until mid-February, there are less than 10 hours of daylight a day. And that's including the sunsets and sunrises.
Wow.
And it's low in the sky. So the light is very filtered. It's a very low, it's a very diffuse light.
How do you deal with that?
And you deal with that. You have sun lapse. Seasonal affective disorder is a real thing around here. You have to make the decision that you want to stay here. The joke is if you can last through 2 winters, you're okay. The other part is that people who live here in the winter go away. Like, I'm going to the sun. I'm going to go to Arizona. I'm going to go to Palm Springs, Hawaii, Mexico, even Eastern Washington, where they get much more sun. People will just go for a weekend or, just to get some sun on their skin. It doesn't have to be warm. It just needs to be sunny.
And we're trying to get away from the sun here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get to the clouds or the cool weather, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
how?
but that's really the climate. Geography wise, Seattle is bounded by two large bodies of water. On the west is Puget Sound, not the Puget Sound, just Puget Sound.
Puget.
And on the east is Lake Washington, which is one of the largest municipal lakes in the country. And so Seattle is a very north-south city, which impacts our traffic tremendously because there's only one freeway through the city that goes north-south. Yeah.
So how does Seattle fare in terms of climate change preparedness? Are you guys getting any hotter?
It does. It is getting hotter. When I first moved here, I can't remember days where we would hit 100 degrees. Now we're having a couple of days a year where we are hitting 100 degrees. We're actually right now, even though the temperature's only in the maybe up to the 80s today. It's still a heat advisory for people who need it. Very few homes have air conditioning. We only got air conditioning installed 2 years ago. There was one day when it was hotter in Seattle than it was in Palm Springs that day.
Yeah.
Like 108, 100. It was horrible. We called and said, okay, order the air conditioner. It's going to take 6 months to get here, and then it's going to take months to get installed, but I'm not going to go through this again. So you are seeing air conditioning coming into the city, but most houses don't have it.
That's surprising because who would think, a big city like Seattle, I would think everybody has air conditioning, but I guess not. If you don't need it, why have it?
Yeah. The other thing around climate change is the city of Seattle. It's a city-owned electric utility. So the city owns the electrical grid. They own the hydroelectric dams, the transmission wires. They own the grid. And they are moving very aggressively into solar, wind, looking at tidal generated power. And also the state is rapidly and aggressively moving to decommissioning coal burning and gas burning power plants. And we have one of the first carbon emission markets in the US, where companies that want to put emissions out need to buy them. It's funny because that was a proposal under one of I think it was George Bush the first, and then all of a sudden, when a Democratic governor proposes it, it's outrageous, but it's working.
Yep. At least they're proactive in doing something.
Yeah. So I would say that the city is also rebuilding its seawall to keep Puget Sound from flooding into parts of downtown Seattle.
It's a good thing.
It comes at the expense of salmon, because the salmon need the gentle slopes and the plants that grow in that tidal zone for hiding places and food. And when you build a wall, you get rid of that tidal zone and you get rid of those plants. And all of a sudden, where are the young salmon supposed to go? So, yes, you need a wall for human development, but it comes at the expense of the native
sea
creatures.
life. Yep, that's unfortunate. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the cost of living. And you laugh. How does Seattle's cost of living compare to other major cities in the U.S.? I know it's a major city, so I guess we do have to compare it to other major cities. Tell us a little bit about that.
Seattle's cost of living is approximately 50% higher than the national average, which puts us up in the New York, San Francisco,
Chicago.
Chicago, puts us up in that range. Again, it's part of the Seattle there's no place for the city to expand. And so housing prices go up because limited supply, which I don't want to sound callous, like, well, I have mine, so ha ha ha. It's there was a deliberate choice made by the state and county governments about 30 years ago to control growth into urban centers. And so vast majorities of what would have become single level suburban houses were declared off limits to development. And so what that does is it intensifies development inside the existing urban centers. And so you get more high rises, you get more duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, as opposed to the traditional single family detached on a 16th of an acre surrounded by lawn. Those are going away. But that's kind of what drives the cost. Yeah.
Sounds similar to New York City.
So other costs of living and utilities. Well, let's get back to housing for a second. So the median house in King County is $885,000.
It's up there.
That's up there. And a typical new construction house out in the suburbs is about 2,700 square feet on a lot that's 5,200 square feet, and you're paying that $885,000 for 2,700 square feet. If you're going to rent in the city of Seattle, you're looking for the cheap, rundown, one-bedroom apartments that you're going to go, why is this even still existing? Those are going to cost you almost $2,000 a month.
Wow.
A two-bedroom apartment goes for around $2,500 to $3,000 a month.
Yep. It's up there.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. How about utility costs?
The average cost of utilities, I did a little research because I wasn't sure how that ranked. I couldn't find how it compares to the rest of the country, but the typical utility, electricity, water, heating, garbage, is around $250 a month. That's the average.
That's not
utilities. Part of that is the city of Seattle owns its own electric power grid.
That makes a difference.
Yeah, and they've owned that since the early 1900s.
That certainly makes a difference because of course, we use air conditioning 24/7 pretty much in Phoenix in the summer. And our electric bills alone can be over $200. And I'm in a condo, 1,700 square foot condo.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're pretty good as far as utility costs. How about grocery prices as it compares?
I don't. It's pricier now than it was a few years ago, but I don't know that it's any pricier than other parts of the country.
Else. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the more local you buy, the cheaper it's going to be. I actually, at one point, I did try, the consumer direct farm boxes, like where the farmers deliver the box to you. And I got really tired of that really fast because in the winter it was the same two or three vegetables, root vegetables. It was boring. But that's what was available. That's what grows locally. In the summer, it's the berries. We get peaches, cherries. The fall, we get apples and pears. And the salmon. We get great salmon. As long as you buy line caught, not farm raised.
Wild.
Don't buy farm raised salmon.
Right. Yep. Same here. Okay. And How about restaurants and dining? I'm sure Seattle is chock full of restaurants and good ones at that.
This
Um,
is a foodie town.
and I'm
It's
sure prices are up there as well.
yes. If you're going to a drive-through fast food restaurant, you're probably going to spend $20 a person ish. I mean, McDonald's is, oh, don't get me started, but that's going to be at the lower end. Um, if you go out for dinner, say even just a mid-range restaurant, you're looking at about $80 for two people. Wine would be on top of that if you got a bottle of wine. The food scene itself is very diverse, but I would say it skews towards Asian, a lot of Asian influence, Asian fusion. We've got some great Vietnamese restaurants. Oh my gosh, one of my favorite restaurants is a Vietnamese restaurant. Um, don't really have good Mexican. So if you like Mexican,
Go to
not here.
Phoenix. You have to go to Phoenix for that.
Yeah, yeah. But pretty much everything else. I mean, we show up on James Beard lists every year. Chefs win awards, restaurants win awards. I don't think we have a Michelin star restaurant here, but
I'm surprised.
I don't know that. I think that might be a little too hoity-toity for Seattle, laid-back Seattle, to have a Michelin restaurant. But yeah, it's a great food city.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. I mean, I've been there too, and we've dined out. I can't remember the exact places, but the food was good. I kind of get confused because I went on the same trip. I went to Portland and Seattle on the same trip, so I kind of get fuzzy on where I was at the time.
Yeah, and we have a great um, brew pub culture. So there's a lot of beer breweries, craft beer breweries, which are really good beers. And a lot of those places serve food. Um, State law requires that if you're going to serve liquor, you need to have a food component. You can't serve liquor only. So brew pubs.
And you have that touristy place with all the fresh foods in there.
Pike Place Market.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. And it's pronounced Pike Place. It's not Pikes. There's no apostrophe S.
Pike
It's
Place.
Pike Place.
That
That's
used
another way you know a tourist. They go, "Where's this Pike's Place Market?" You go, "No."
well, Pike used to be a flavor or type of coffee that Starbucks had sold as well.
The original Starbucks is actually in Pike Place Market.
Yeah, I went to
Starbucks
that one too.
#1. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. There was a long line. I remember people waiting online, and I'm like, what are they waiting for? And
They want to buy it. Yeah.
I look in, it's just a regular Starbucks,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, I don't have to wait here.
No. I am not a huge Starbucks fan of the coffee.
Right.
If I'm going to drink, good coffee, Starbucks is not on that list.
Right. You have enough. You have so many different. You have such a big coffee culture that
We do.
you can go anywhere to get good coffee.
Yes. Yeah. There are some intersections in downtown before the pandemic. There were intersections in downtown Seattle or downtown Bellevue. There was a coffee house on each corner of the intersection, and they were all busy. And they were all different companies, different barista, and one of the things about the coffee culture here is you learn how to talk coffee beans, how to talk coffee roast, I like my dry roasted Ethiopian beans. I like my
Yeah, I could
I want
imagine.
my low acid, And so you go to some of these coffee houses, and it's like reading a wine menu. It's like, oh,
Right.
I've got beans from here and here and here. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And people know those.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're living in a coffee culture city. Absolutely. Do you think there are any LGBTQ friendly restaurants? Like, is there actually a neighborhood?
There is a neighborhood. When I first moved here, the neighborhood was in the neighborhood we call Capitol Hill, which is just east of downtown.
Hmm.
That was ground zero, and everything was there. But now, over the last 25, 30 years, it's really spread out. And so, while historically, yes, Capitol Hill is still considered the capital, the gay center of Seattle,
Hmm.
there are gay bars in West Seattle. There's a gay bar in Bellevue, which, yeah, there's a gay bar in Bellevue. There are bars scattered around. There are restaurants. When you asked if there's a gay-friendly restaurant, I'm going, yeah, all of them. I can only
Okay.
think of one restaurant that might be considered unfriendly, and that's
Really?
outside the city, down south, and it's just because the owner was involved in the January 6th stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's as close as I can think of an unfriendly restaurant. We
But
are
that's
very
good to know.
integrated into the life of this region.
That's good to know. So one would feel pretty safe
Oh yeah.
living anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the city of
Oh
Seattle.
yeah. Within the city of Seattle, there'd be no issues.
Okay, so we're on the subject of LGBTQ community. Um, how inclusive and supportive is the community? I mean, do they have like a center? Are there things to do especially for the community? Is there anything set up for LGBTQ retirees? Do you know?
They just opened, I'm trying to think when, I think it was within the last year. They just opened LGBTQIA2S Senior Center on Capitol Hill.
That's cool.
And it's part of a queer senior housing development that's income tested. So you have to be at a certain percentage of the median income in order to qualify to get an apartment there. And on the ground floor, they have a dedicated senior center that it's got resource referrals. It's a community center. They coordinate activities. Yeah.
That's awesome. We need
And
more of those in the United States.
yeah.
We
And this was
definitely
the
do.
first one in Seattle. So it's a test. There are also there's a couple of just community centers that have slightly different focuses. But you're not going to really find a community center in the city of Seattle that doesn't include some sort of LGBTQ outreach.
That's pretty refreshing.
Whether you're talking about La Centra de la Raza, some of the African American community centers, every community center is going to have some queer outreach, because just demographically and financially they have to.
I know you guys have Pride, right?
Oh yeah, we just had it last week.
And it's a large one.
Yeah, there were a couple 100,000 people.
That's pretty large.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say maybe 100,000, but it used to be up on Capitol Hill, and then it just got too big, and so the organization made a very deliberate decision to move it downtown and to get corporate sponsors, and it's now it's now a parade and not a political march, because when I was first moved here, it had to be a political march in order to qualify for as a First Amendment event, and so the city picked up the funding. Now they actually they call it a parade, and so they have to raise the money to pay for the impact on the city, which is also a measure of progress of how far our community has come in the city. I mean, when it was in the early 90s, and it was still the march that was on Broadway up on Capitol Hill, we didn't have as many rights, even in the city of Seattle, let alone at the state level. And it was touch and go. So moving from a march to a parade is actually a sign of progress and accomplishment.
Do you care to share what you're doing personally with your congregation, your Lutheran church?
Yeah, so I've been a member at my congregation since 1990, and very quickly the church voted to become open and affirming. And in the Lutheran tradition, that's called reconciling in Christ. And we did that in 92. We were the first congregation in our region, known as a synod, to do that. And then my husband and I got church married there in 98, and that created a little kerfuffle around the synod because they weren't supposed to do that, but we did it anyway. And I ended up getting elected to the synod council, so the regional governing board. And by the time I left 8 years later, we had the highest concentration of open and affirming Lutheran congregations in the country. Wow. in our region.
Good for you.
And the synod was officially open and affirming. And I got to serve. I went to the national conventions a couple of times and got to vote to lift the ban on clergy on queer clergy who were in relationships. So you could be queer and in a relationship and still be clergy. So I had a hand in that. Not a lot, but I was there. I was in the room when it happened.
Kudos to you. That's great. That's great.
But other religious traditions around the city are also very
open,
queer positive, like the Episcopalians, the Methodists, the Jewish community here. It doesn't matter if you're conservative, Orthodox, Reform. There's some level of queer identity in the Jewish community here. Muslim community, I'm not quite sure of. I've heard that there's an all-inclusive mosque or madrasa somewhere in the Seattle area.
Wow! But
I haven't found out anything about that. Buddhists, there are congregations that aren't, obviously, but it's very easy to find those that are.
That is great. All right, let's get into arts and culture.
Yes.
So arts and culture. I need my art fix. I need my culture fix. I'm from New York. I kind of need my Broadway thing. Is that accessible in Seattle?
Yes. We have symphony, ballet, opera, several art museums, including a dedicated Asian art museum. Now, nothing like New York City, but we do have art museums here. Theater, we have several Tony Award-winning theater companies. We get the Broadway touring companies come through here. So there's the show on Broadway, and then there's like different regional grades. We get that highest grade, so it's just below Broadway. Broadway theaters will test shows here, like Hairspray got its start here. Jersey Boys got its start here.
So much fun.
A couple of other ones they start here, and then maybe they make it to Broadway, or maybe the producers go, yeah, no, this isn't going to work.
That's cool, though.
But there is a very well subscribed Broadway season here. Yeah, if there's an art, it's here. And
So
burlesque, people around here love their burlesque theaters. I go to
burlesque,
burlesque shows.
really?
I think they're great.
Female or male?
Both.
Okay, that's kind of cool. It's
And it
interesting.
blends. To go to a gender fluid burlesque show.
Yeah, that's something I'd enjoy, I think.
It's the whole evening. It's the experience. You're
Right,
with friends. You're sitting. You're having some cocktails. You're watching, and it's not. I don't. It's burlesque. It's not nasty. It's not
right,
nudity.
right. It's
It's
old time
burlesque.
burlesque.
Yeah, with the fans or the
Hmm.
the reveal or the almost reveal, and
Right. No,
um,
that's cool.
yeah. So Seattle is a hub for burlesque.
I never knew that. The things you learn. Anything else as far as cultural activities that you can
Um,
think of?
Movies. There's
Hmm.
a large independent movie culture here. Um, we have one of the largest film festivals in the country. It takes place here every year, the Seattle International Film Festival, SIFF. Um, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, had its U.S. premiere at SIFF back in 91, I think. 91-ish, 91, 92. Paris is Burning had its North American debut. Um, yeah, so SIFF it's a month-long international films that you're just not going to see anywhere else. And people will buy a pass and they will take the entire month of May off and go basically movies from morning to midnight for a month.
Wow.
That's dedication. I
Yeah,
can't do that, but
me neither. I can't sit in one place. Nope. But
yeah. And then all the sports,
you won't run out of things to
you
do.
won't run out of things to do. You won't run out of things to do. And I like Bollywood movies or movies from India.
Hmm.
There's a theater just up the road that basically shows only Indian language movies with English subtitles. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, those are fun.
Something I've
I have
never
no idea what this
experienced.
movie's about, but I had a great time.
Yeah.
And
All
we've got
right.
all of our professional sports from women's basketball, women's soccer. We've got the Seattle Seahawks, the Mariners, the Sounders. And that's just at the professional level. Then there's all the lower level teams. And if there's a club sport, there's a gay club sport. Gay dodgeball.
Oh my goodness. That sounds like
Yeah,
fun.
it is. Yeah, that's in the winters. January, February. It's gay dodgeball league. Who knew?
That's
Okay,
great. That's great.
we even
So
have a
you wouldn't be
cricket team.
bored. Nobody
You
would
wouldn't be
be
bored.
bored.
You
That's
wouldn't be
great.
bored.
Tell us about Seattle's transportation. I
Ugh.
understand it's. I understand they have trains, right?
Yeah,
I
we're
think I
getting
took
there.
one. I think I
We're
took one
getting
from the
there.
airport.
Yes, there's. So, like I mentioned earlier, Seattle is a north-south city, and the only major freeway that runs through the city north-south is I-5, Interstate 5, that connects Mexico to Canada.
Hmm.
Um, but that's it. That's the freeway. And there's also two bridges that run east across Lake Washington, two floating bridges. And then there's a belt highway 405 that goes through those eastern suburbs. They are building a light rail, and you've been on the parts that's been completed. The part from North Seattle down through to the airport is done, and it's now going further north and further south. And the plans are to connect to the east side and they're building that. They hit a snag at my local rail, train station, because they're building a bridge or a train tracks across a floating bridge.
It's a challenge.
That's some serious engineering.
Yeah, it is a challenge.
And it didn't work the first time. So they had to go back and they're fixing it. But they've
It'll
been
work.
building light rail for 20 years, and it's going to be at least another 20 years before it's complete.
The one I was on, I don't know if it was considered light rail, but it went from the airport right to downtown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I call it all light rail.
Oh, okay. It looked like a subway to me. So
yeah, I just call it all light rail. Maybe it's a heavy rail component, but I just call it light rail.
It seemed like it was pretty decent. It got us to where we wanted to go. So
mm-hmm. It's geared for that transit system is geared towards commuters.
Right.
Getting people in and out of downtown Seattle, downtown Bellevue, at rush hours, and connecting to the airport.
Yeah.
It's not so good for people who want to say go to the mall or go to a park. It's just not responsive that way. And that was a very deliberate decision by the people who designed it and pushed it on the voters, that it was a commuter-based transit system. So when I was teaching, I couldn't take public transit, even bus, because no bus went to my high school where I was teaching. It would have been a 3-hour commute or something like that each way. I'm like, no, I'm going to drive 20 minutes in my car. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I also remember a monorail that I took to the Space Needle.
Yep. There is the monorail that goes almost nowhere.
Right.
It goes
pretty
from downtown.
Much. It's like 3 stops or something.
Yeah. No, it's there's only 2. There's at Westlake Mall, which is where it starts, and then at the Space Needle.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 stops.
Oh, okay.
They tried to expand it. There was a citizen initiative to expand monorail throughout the city of Seattle. And that was not going to be a commuter-based. That was going to be a citizen-based and a citizen-responsive, resident-responsive transit system. And the powers that be did not like that. And so they ended up repealing it. And we're stuck now with light rail that serves commuters and business interests and doesn't serve the interests of residents.
Got it. And I remember, I think, was I in Seattle? I'm not sure. But do you have like a bus system, like over, it looks like a kind of a trolley thing? Do you have that?
There are a couple of trolleys that are now back in place after being gone for 100 years. And in typical Seattle fashion, Paul Allen, I don't know if you know that name.
Mm-hmm.
He co-founded Microsoft with Bill Gates and is widely considered to be the brains.
Right.
And Bill Gates was the business.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Allen ended up with a huge amount of property adjacent to downtown Seattle. And he developed it as biotech and just computer, like Google's headquarters is there. And all these biotech companies are there. Well, part of his holding the city hostage to do that was he wanted a dedicated trolley system within his development. Okay. All right. Fine. Somebody leaked the name of the trolley as the South Lake Union trolley. And immediately people came up with T-shirts that said, "I rode the slut." Even today, You can still say, "Oh yeah, I got to go ride the slut."
I ride the slut. That's pretty good.
But immediately after, the city said, "No, no, no, that's not our name for it," and we went, yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
You call it what you want. We'll call it what it really is. So
Very slutty. And isn't Microsoft headquartered in Bellevue?
it's Redmond,
Oh, it's
which is
Redmond.
out past Bellevue.
Okay.
But they have certainly in the wake of 9/11, the government went to what they called critical industries and asked them to spread out. And so Microsoft has its primary offices are in Redmond, its primary campus, but they also have, I think, like their legal or licensing division is out of Bellevue, and there's another big chunk of their corporate offices in Seattle. Yeah, and Amazon is the same way. Amazon is spread out around the region. So
I thought Bill Gates lived in Bellevue.
He lives in a suburb of Bellevue called Medina, which is like just the waterfront. It's a very small.
So it's Bellevue's a suburb, so it's a suburb of a suburb.
Yes.
Okay. To me, that's a little rural.
Although Bellevue is now pretty much, I mean, I don't know that I would refer to Bellevue as a suburb city because it's got high rises like Seattle. Not as dense, but it's the third largest city in the state.
It's quite expensive there too.
Yes. So most of those housing figures I gave you were regional, not just city specific, because Bellevue is a nice place. It's it's more modern,
but it's pricey.
It's pricey.
Yep. Okay. How about healthcare? For such a big city, it's bound to have pretty good healthcare. Tell us a little bit about that.
Awesome healthcare. Period.
Hospitals.
We got multiple.
Are they close by?
Oh yeah, where I sit right now, within a 10-minute drive, I can hit 1, 2, 3, 4 different hospitals. One of the issues with hospitals is a lot of them are now owned by various Catholic entities. And so there's a tension and friction between the Catholic values and what the community values. Mm-hmm. And so it can be difficult for people who are trans to get the healthcare they need in these religious-run hospital chains.
That's unfortunate.
There was just a lawsuit last year from a trans man who claimed discrimination in his treatment. There are a couple of non-religious-based hospitals. That's where I go. I just don't want to give my money, my insurance money to one of those hospitals. And they're great hospitals. I mean, people who go there, they get great care. I just won't go there. So
let me ask, where you are, I don't know where you're situated in Seattle, but it's not walkable, is it?
I live on Mercer Island, which is in the middle of Lake Washington.
Okay.
And Interstate 90 cuts across the top of the island.
So you need a car.
I need a car. I can't get off the island without a car. There is a bus, but it's always full. And again, it's a commuter-based bus. So if I want to go somewhere outside of commute time, there's really no public transit for me.
So if I lived in Seattle proper, could I go without a car?
You can make it work. I would say it depends on where in Seattle. The more centrally located you are, say Capitol Hill, Queen Anne, downtown, you are less likely to need a car. If you're out in West Seattle, Ballard, North Seattle, you're going to probably need a car. You can walk. Seattle's built on 7 hills like Rome. So you have hills to contend with. So yes, you can walk. You can ride a bike. But you got to navigate the hills. I actually have a map, a City of Seattle map, that shows the preferred bike routes based on what are the flattest routes around the city.
Yeah, I remember when we walked. Of course, we were on vacation, so we're touristy. We walked from downtown all the way up to that huge Starbucks past Capitol Hill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know what I'm referring to. And I think we had to walk uphill over the highway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was I-5.
Yeah, that was I-5.
Yeah. So that was quite a walk.
Yeah.
So
And the hills aren't shallow.
no.
They're steep hills.
Yeah, I was kind of tired there.
Yeah.
Walking back and forth, that was quite a few miles.
Yeah. Now do that in the rain.
No. I think we did also, but yeah, I understand. You need a car.
You need a car.
Okay.
Or you need access to a car service.
Okay.
There are
Uber.
Not just Uber or Lyft, but there are car subscription services where you buy membership into a club, and then you can reserve a car to use.
Like a rental.
And those are really attractive because you don't have to pay for parking.
Oh. Why not?
You just borrow the car, you go get it, drop it back off.
Oh.
You're done.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So healthcare, getting back to the healthcare. So the hospitals are in close proximity. How many hospitals do you think Seattle has? Quite a bit.
Harborview, Virginia Mason, Swedish, Overlake. I'm missing one. And there's Kaiser. Kaiser's now here. They have their own system. I'm going to say there's at least 5 major hospital chains, and they have different campuses around.
And what is your experience in as far as getting an appointment with the specialist or your primary physician?
I can get in to see my primary care within a day.
Oh, that's great.
Specialists, they're specialists. They might take a little time. Like my husband needed an MRI, and they said, "Oh, first one available is a month." And I said, "No, we need that now." And so I just said, "All right, I'm just going to call every day and see if there's any cancellations that I can get." And I was able to get a cancellation and get in the next week. So this coming week.
So that's not bad. Yeah, here in Phoenix, we have to get an MRI or any type of imaging, there's separate private institutions that do that. So
yeah, the biggest thing was waiting for insurance to say, yes, you can have your MRI that your doctor says you need.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's the same here. Okay. And the quality of healthcare is good?
Yes.
Okay. That's important.
And there are so many LGBT doctors here. I mean, my primary care doctor, gay. My dentist, gay. My psychiatrist, gay. Gay.
That's good to know. That's good. I'd like to keep it in the family.
There are some specialized practices that cater to LGBT. Like up on Capitol Hill, there's a couple of doctors, all gay staff. All their clients are gay. And there's a waiting list to get in.
I'm sure.
I'm on that waiting list. It's going to be about 3 years before
But that's good to know. That's excellent. That's pretty important.
If it's important for you to have to get your medical care or any of those professional services with a gay provider or lesbian, it's here.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about taxes. So the state of Washington doesn't have income tax.
Correct.
And so this benefits retirees, especially regarding Social Security, right? So Social Security isn't taxed by the state, and is pensions, 401ks, and IRAs. I'm assuming they're not taxed either.
They're not taxed as income.
Right. As income. So that's a substantial savings. Now, tell us a little bit about property taxes. Are they high?
So property taxes, I looked this up because I didn't know it. The median property tax in King County is $3,600 per year for a home that's valued at $410,000. There are no homes that are $410,000.
Right, like double it.
So double that. So you're looking at $7,200 a year in median property taxes. I know my property taxes are much higher, but that's just because of where I live and the type of house I have, and I live in a house that's worth about $1.2 million. My property taxes are $20,000 plus a year.
Wow. That's a hefty bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because schools are funded through property taxes. Most government services are funded through property taxes. Pretty much everything in the state is funded through property taxes. The state has a property tax. The county has a property tax. The city has a property tax. If you're in the light rail district, you have an additional property tax. If you live in a certain water district or fire district, you'll have an additional property. And it adds up. The government's going to get the money it needs.
And this is how I look at it. So you get what you pay for. If the state of Washington doesn't collect income tax, they have to collect tax somehow.
Mm-hmm.
How else are they going to collect it? So
sales tax. We have a very high sales tax.
What's your sales tax?
Depending on what city you live in, because again, there's a state sales tax, there's a county sales tax, and there could be a city sales tax. And currently, depending on where you live, it's anywhere between, I'd say, 10 and 12%.
That's high.
So it's a very regressive system. Extremely. I mean, I can afford the sales tax. I don't really pay much attention to it. But if I'm living paycheck to paycheck and I have to pay sales taxes, that's a huge chunk of your income goes to paying sales tax.
This is why people that live downstate, like Vancouver, Washington, go over to Portland.
Yes.
Because Portland has no sales tax.
Correct.
And Washington has no income tax.
Correct.
So it's kind of a pretty good deal over there.
Correct. And so a lot of people who work in Portland will live in Vancouver because then they don't have to pay an income tax. They do their grocery shopping or there's no sales in Washington. There's no sales tax on groceries.
Okay.
But your clothes,
your electronics,
computers, electronics. Drive to Oregon, save yourself money.
Yeah, they just go over the bridge.
Just go over the bridge, but don't buy a car in Oregon.
Somebody told me that. Maybe
even though you won't pay sales tax in Oregon, when you try to register the car in Seattle, they'll go, "Oh, you bought this in Oregon. Ka-ching, they're going to charge you your sales tax. Da, 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 da,
Oh
da, da.
boy.
And yeah, so you're going to get, so don't try and buy a car in Oregon and then bring it to Washington and pawn it off as tax-free, because
It's not going to work. Okay. So that's interesting.
Yeah, Boeing. So one that chaps my hide, Boeing doesn't pay sales tax when it sells a plane. State law exempts Boeing from charging sales tax to its customers.
Huh.
So United Airlines buys a Boeing plane, they don't pay sales tax on that $100 million airplane.
Interesting.
What they do is they'll take the owner, the company that they're selling the plane to, they'll take them on a test flight. And they take off from Boeing Field, or whatever the airport is here in Seattle. They'll fly out over the Pacific Ocean, hand them the keys, and they get dropped off somewhere. And then, oh, yeah, the sale transaction took place outside of the state of Washington, so we don't owe sales taxes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm trying to picture. So you have no other state to go across like Oregon, right?
Not in Seattle.
Not in Seattle.
I mean, if I was really going to buy, I don't even know what I would buy that would
cost so much.
It's a 3-hour drive to Oregon from here. And it's just not worth the hassle.
Yep, definitely. All right. Let's see. Crime and safety. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about the unhoused situation in Seattle. What's crime like?
So, as a white man, I feel safe anywhere in the city. Just got to put that out there.
How about people of color?
We have the same systemic racism problems within the police department here that you do all over the country. There was just an incident about a year ago where a police officer was responding to, no, they weren't even responding to a call, but they were speeding on a city street and they hit a woman. And he gets on the phone with his supervisor. Oh no, I hit this woman. Ha 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 ha. She was black. Ha ha ha. What's her value? The city will cut a check for $20,000 and the family will be happy with it. That was recorded, and that got released. And that's just the most recent incident. We have people who they get shot, sleeping while black in their own apartments. It's here too.
Yeah.
The department says it's trying to make progress, but I don't see it. And again, I can live fairly immune from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't come across any of that. So
no. And so getting back to just crime in general, the last statistics I found were that in 2022 there were 736 violent crimes per 100,000 residents. So that's, multiply that by 4. So you're at about 3,200. No, by 8, 5,600 violent crimes in a year in 2022. That's murder, rape, burglary. In 2022, in that same year, of those 736, 52 of those were homicides. So there were about 400 homicides, I guess, in 2022. If you're playing with the statistics.
What's your population? Do you know?
It just passed 800,000 in the city of Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's some crime.
There's crime.
Yep.
But different neighborhoods are going to have different amounts of crime and different types of crime. So it's hard to really talk about whether, again, as a white guy, it's hard for me to talk about whether Seattle is a safe city. It's safe to me, but I don't live in a neighborhood where I've got drive-by shootings. I don't live in a neighborhood where there's, drug dealing going on the corners.
Right.
And even if I did, I'm going to be somewhat immune from some of that because, again, white guy who doesn't participate in that culture. So it's hard to talk. I'm finding it hard to talk about crime in a dispassionate way.
Yep. I hear you.
There is a movement in the regional police authorities to move away from to create a 911 service that focuses on social and mental interventions. So if somebody's having a psychotic episode, you're not going to send out the SWAT team. They're going to send mental health trained response. So that's getting set up.
That's good.
And to try and divert some police funding away from that kind of violent intervention to more of a community mental health, social resources intervention. That's
It sounds like the
funding
right
for that
step.
goes up and down, but
Yep.
they're trying.
Oh, at least they're trying. So, if you lived in the city proper, would you, and in a I guess a good area, would you feel safe walking around at night?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And how about the homeless population? So I remember in our walks from all around Seattle, I don't know, we were following GPS and we wound up under a highway, probably, I don't know if what
Probably
highway,
I-5.
probably I-5. And there were tents, like a tent city along the way that we had to actually get off the sidewalk, go into the street in order to go around them and
Yes.
walk to our destination.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. Is the city of Seattle doing anything as far? I don't know what the answer is as far as what they can do now that also the Supreme Court just ruled that it's illegal for homeless people to be out.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Shocked that you're criminalizing human existence.
Yeah. So
So the last statistics that I could find were that from the county, King County, that there were approximately 53,000 people who experienced homelessness at some point, at some level in the year 2022. And that was a 32% increase from 2015. So from 2015 to 2022, the homeless population increased 32%. The major driver of that is housing costs.
mm-hmm.
I know because of some of the work that I've done with various agencies, a lot of those people who are homeless have full-time jobs.
They just can't afford to live anywhere.
They can't afford to live. Maybe it's because they're getting paid minimum wage. Maybe it's because they have a criminal record that landlords won't let them rent. Maybe they have a poor credit score. But these are people who they have jobs. But in order to afford one bedroom rent of almost $2,000 on a minimum wage. Come on.
Yeah, you can't live here. I mean, making minimum wage.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have one of the highest minimum wages in the country. It's like 20 something an hour.
Wow.
That took a lot of political will. So our minimum wage was set at a level by the state legislature, and then there's a built-in every year they adjust it for inflation automatically. There doesn't have to be an act of the legislature. It's already done. And then the city of Seattle raised its minimum wage a little bit higher. And again, they tag it to inflation, so you don't have to have this political argument every year. One of the things that the city has done is they have set some areas where it's legal to camp, especially like if you have an RV or a truck or you're living in a car. There are some streets scattered throughout the city. It's not just one neighborhood where it is legal for you to park your RV, your truck, and to live there. So you can stay parked for more than 24 hours.
So I guess that makes, so the state and the city, I guess, overrules or overrides the federal. So if the federal government is saying, excuse me, if the federal government is saying it's illegal to camp out and the city provides a place that you can, I guess the city wins.
I think this, my understanding of that ruling was if the city says it's illegal to camp, then it's illegal to camp. But if the city says it's okay and here's the parameters around when you can camp, then I think that's acceptable. I haven't read that decision, so I don't understand all the nuances of it. But at the same time, though, the city will go in and destroy tent cities. They will just take bulldozers in and just, and all those people have lost now their tent, what few possessions they have.
Yeah.
And the city just basically says, goodbye.
I don't know what the answer is.
The county does have, there are government services and government money in place. The county funds homelessness with property taxes at the rate of $121 a year for a house that's $700,000. So I pay almost about $200 a year of my property taxes goes towards addressing homelessness. And I know that some of those funds they will buy hotel motels and then turn them into temporary housing. They will provide hygiene and sanitation stations in certain areas where camping is legal. There are some micro housing villages where it's like you get a house that's about the size of a shipping pallet.
Yep.
It's big enough for a bed, and that's about it. But it's a place.
Like a pod.
And it's enclosed, it's fenced, so there's some security.
Mm-hmm.
And my congregation, we have a feeding program, and we use county funds to bring in doctors to provide flu shots, dentists to do some very basic dental care, other social workers that are funded through this housing levy, so that people who come into our feeding program who may be eligible for Social Security benefits that they don't know about. And so is it enough funding? Probably, no. But
it's something.
It's something.
Yeah. Seems like they're going in the right direction.
It is a hassle. walking through these tents area, but where else are they supposed to go?
Yeah. Even if they're moved or chased out of one place, where do they go?
Where do they go?
Right. And it's the same I think it's the same everywhere. Because here in Phoenix, too, there was a tent situation where the police got rid of the tents. But now I see them around my area
Yeah.
because they have to go somewhere.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. Whenever I see them and and it's so hot here, we say just stay there, and we go upstairs, get a package full of food and water and stuff like that, and give it to them. That's
Yeah.
my way of doing that stuff. So, okay. Closing thoughts. Finally, what advice would you give someone considering Seattle as their retirement destination?
I would say you need to consider the geology. Earthquake threat. We have earthquakes. There are 5 active volcanoes around here.
Good to know.
Mount St. Helens is grumbling again.
Uh-oh. How close is that to you?
Hmm?
How close?
That's a couple hundred miles. That's a 2-hour drive.
Okay.
And when it exploded in the 80s, it went away from Seattle. The wind blew all the ash away from Seattle. So Seattle itself really didn't have an impact from the Mount St. Helens explosion. If Mount Rainier goes, that's only 100 miles away, and we're overdue. That's gonna impact you. And you can ask about what's the volcanic threat. You can ask about the earthquake. Has the house been retrofitted? If it's an old house, is it attached to the foundation?
Good questions.
I would also, depending on where you live in the region, consider your tsunami evacuation routes.
Things that possible. It's like things that we never thought about before, like climate change. Now climate change also has affected a lot. So
I would say if you're considering moving here, you need to really think about how you're going to deal with the gloom in the winter. If you're prone to depression, this might not be the city for you.
Mm-hmm.
Without creating either a medical, or you need to figure out how you're going to work around the depression that you're prone to living here. And maybe that's, you snowbird it. We call it snowbirds.
Right.
You go away for the winter. Those are things that I would consider. You need to think about those. Now, once you've thought about them, do what you want. Some of the things that I love about Seattle is very laid back. I go to the opera in jeans and Birkenstocks. And yes, sandals and with socks are a thing.
Yeah.
Sandals with socks are definitely a thing, especially for men.
I would laugh. Coming from Phoenix, I would laugh.
Well, you wear shorts and then you wear socks with your Birkenstocks. It's I like that. I like my coffee culture. I like my movie culture. I like that pot is legal. It's regulated just like beer and like alcohol. I like that the LGBT community we are so integrated into the civic life here. you can't serve on a board without having at least one of us. You can't, if there's a government discussion, it's going to include a discussion about, well, what about the gays? You know, we have one of the last lesbian bars in the country is in Seattle. Being gay is almost it. Nobody cares.
That's refreshing.
And those that do care are like, yay! it's just not a big deal. You know, my neighbors are more concerned about, you know, put my garbage cans away than I got a rainbow flag hanging outside.
Right.
And, you know, the other day they said, do you still really need to do that? It's like, yeah, I think I do.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
But they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met my husband here. We've been here 34 years. We raised 2 kids. Nobody had an issue about 2 men raising kids. Nobody. We went to the public schools, and I asked, you know, what about? And they said, well, what about it? It's just you're 2 dads. Oh, do you want to be on the PTA?
That's great. That really is great.
We can walk down the street pretty much anywhere in the state holding hands and not have to worry about being accosted.
I love that.
We can, yeah, pretty much anywhere I want to go in the state. Again, maybe it's because I'm white. Maybe it's because I'm upper middle class. I don't feel targeted anywhere in the state.
That means a lot.
From where I live, I can go an hour and be at the beach. Not that I would go in the water because it's only maybe 50, 60 degrees. Burr. But I could go to the beach and, you know, or down to the shore. I can go up to the mountains. I can be an hour. I can be hiking in the winter. I can go snow. I can ski. It's a stunningly beautiful area. And
it's green.
It's green. I mean, it's green. It's green all the time, whether it's moss or whether it's the leaves. It's green. People who've lived in Seattle a long time, we call ourselves moss backs because you get the moss behind your ears, or you know, yeah.
But that's wonderful.
But it's a good place to live if you can afford it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Well, thank you, Steven. Thank you for joining us today in the podcast and giving us your thoughts and experiences of the Seattle area. We really, really appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Of course. And thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Yes.